So if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. This is the year 2011. 525,600 minutes. What do you want to do with them? Do you want to stand for something, or do you want to fall for anything? We've had some rituals we've been going through recently, haven't we? Those of you that were here for the Christmas Eve service, we lit our candle to symbolize that light of God, that Christ consciousness being born in each of us. Then we had our burning bowl last week, that we burned that piece of paper, those things that we weren't standing for anymore, the things that weren't part of our forward spiritual movement. And you've noticed the minute you put that piece of paper in the fire, it just burned right up. And there was a bonfire for some of you guys, I saw it. And this week, we're talking about our white stone. We've got our white stone ceremony. And I would like to say, any of you that don't have a white stone, if you raise your hand, our ushers will come and bring you a white stone. And I actually do need one because I swiped one from one of the choir members. Everyone, Melissa here. Thank you. Melissa. What's that? Oh yeah, Janet needs one too. We're white stone free here. Many people need some. Anyway, we can also call this the clinking ceremony. A lot of people drop these while we're talking, so hang on to them, all right? But the main thing is, did you get one, Janet? Okay. See, there's not one thing on this stone, right? It's completely blank. That's because you're making it up. You're making up your 525,600 minutes. Few of them have already passed, but we're making this up. You're writing on your white stone this new year. There was a minister that had been really upset about the driveway to the church. All this cracks in it. And so we've been really working, the church had been working with putting a new driveway in, and they finally got the money to put their driveway in, and the new concrete was being laid, and the minister went out and looked at this new concrete driveway and said, I'm so grateful for this new driveway. And he looked down at the end of the driveway, and there were these kids at the end of the driveway drawing little animals and their names and pictures, and he said, kids, this is our new concrete driveway, go home. So the kids scampered home, and about 15 minutes later, Mrs. Smith called and said, Pastor, my little Cindy just ran home, and she's all sad because she had been playing in the driveway. And I thought you told us last week, I thought your talk was on love the little children. What's going on here? My kid was just sitting home because you were hollering at her. And the minister said, Mrs. Smith, I was talking about loving the little children in the abstract, not in the concrete. I have to look for these things, y'all. So anyway, the point is, today you're writing in the concrete. You're writing something that's going to guide you in your next year. So let's spend some time reflecting on what is the next chapter of your life. I know Janet said she had her stone with her all year, that she looked on it and reflected on it, and it really guided her through these 525,600 minutes. So I have 3 questions to pose to you today that I am inviting you to know more of who you are and how you'd like to create your new year. And the first question is, who am I? The second question is, where am I going? And the third question is, who's going with me? So our first question, who am I? When we ask that, we may find ourselves thinking about more of a role than our soul. Right? We think of who I am, that I'm a parent, or I'm a teacher, or I'm my health, or I'm my profession, or whatever. But we don't really often think of those God qualities. And we get real bogged down in perhaps the circumstances of our life rather than this ongoing spiritual journey. There was a story about a little boy that had goldfish in a bowl, and he decided he needed to change the whole goldfish bowl. He didn't know where to put his fish, and he put him in the bathtub to swim around a while he cleaned out the bowl. And when he finished cleaning out the bowl, he went to the bathtub, and he looked and he noticed his goldfish were only swimming in the part of the tub that was as big as their bowl. That they were right there because that's all they knew about themselves was this state of consciousness, and they had a whole tub to swim in. But they stayed right here. And how many of us just stay in our circumstances. You know, it's always been like this for me in relationships. It's always been like this for me in my finances. It's always been like this for me in my health. We've been taught these things. And so when we look at something like a blank slate, we think, oh, wow, who am I? Who am I? Marianne Williamson says that that we're not so much afraid of our inadequacy, we're really afraid of our success. We're afraid of this being that we can become. So let's just feel the fear and do it anyway, right? And she said, who are you to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? And then she said, who are you not to be? So I just invite you to get out of this little part of your bathtub and row with me for a moment. And I'm going to say this once, and I'd like you to repeat after me. I am brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous. All right? Let's say that together. I am brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous. Breathe into it. You know, I hope that feels really comfortable. Because you are. Have you ever looked at a child and not recognized that in them? And all of us were these children that knew who we were at one point, and we just forgot. So this year, we get to create something that is who we are, rather than who we are not. Let me tell you about a guy that knew about his greatness and stayed committed to knowing about his greatness. This was a young man that was raised in Port Arthur, Texas, in a very poverty-stricken area. His grandparents had 7 children, and from those 7, they had 43 grandchildren. So he was one of 43 in an area that was a very depressed area of his country. And so this young man could have very well stayed in that small part of the bathtub, right? Stayed in knowing what he wasn't than what he was. But he was wanting to stand for being great. And in his family system, he would go out and do things that were different. He'd run errands when other people were getting into drugs and alcohol, and he was, and in the ways of getting in trouble. And he would always achieve, because he knew he wanted to stand for being great. That no matter what, he was not going to live in this system because he knew he was born for greater things, like all of us. What do you stand for? And he kept standing for being great, and he started achieving in sports. And he ended up going to the University of Texas and playing sports, and he was into track, and he was into football. But they came up to him at one point, his coaches came up to him and said, you know, you need to choose one. You know, what do you stand for? You know, you don't do both things well, so you need to decide where do you want to be great? What do you stand for? So this young man chose football. And he kept playing football, and he kept getting better and better because he was committed to being great. And pretty soon he was picked up by the NFL. And he recognized that he played for the NFL for a while. And at one point in his career, he recognized that he was being put on the inactive list. And see, that wasn't about being great. He stood for being great. And so he went up to his coach and he said, if I'm going to wear this uniform, I want to be great. I need for you to tell me what I need to do to be great. I'll do anything you tell me because I refuse to be mediocre. I refuse to not be great. Tell me what I need to do. I'll do anything. And this coach was so inspired by this man's passion to be great, what he was standing for, rather than falling for anything else, that he continued to work with him. And this young man has now, this season, run 1,467 yards in this season, has inspired many of us, is going to the Pro Bowl, and let's send some really great energy to our Kansas City Chief running back that knows his greatness, Jamal Charles, right? Talk about a team that's gone beyond what they know about themselves. You know, and how exciting. I feel the energy of these guys going to the playoffs today. And, you know, did they know this at the beginning of their season? But they want to be great. And I love Jamal's story. He was written up in the paper last year and really inspired me. You know, what do you stand for? What do you want these 525,600 minutes to feel like and to look like? So who am I? Let's let it be something bigger than you were told. Let's let it be something new, something bigger than what you know about yourself.